and gentlemen, chefs and chefettes. Today I'm going to be cooking two quite old dishes for Best of British, which is one is going to be braised oxtail with some seasonal vegetables. The second is going to be an ox cheek with a parsnip puree. 2 cuts of meat, very inexpensive. I think we costed these out to be about £1 a portion and about £1.25 on the current today's market price. So for those of you who have never prepared an oxtail, what we have is the towel and its joints. And between each joint is a little cartilage that you can cut between, or you could alternatively always ask your butcher to cut it for you. So I'm going to cut this now and just get it started. So bear with me for 2-3 minutes while I just cut it, and I'll quickly show you how. So there it goes, straight through. Well, there we go. Now with the ones that have got a slight bigger fat covering, just cut it off. This needs to be well seasoned. It's going to be heavily fried in a pan. I then tend to also use a little bit of cayenne pepper as well as a seasoning. You need to place it into some flour. Give it a good coating. Now, along with the oxtail, we need a matignon or a flavouring ingredient. So what we've got here is a basic mirepoix. So celery, carrots, onions, garlic, all in there, and some thyme. So they're the main ingredients. So while we're still here, I'm just going to prep the ox cheek as well, because we're double up. Now you can see here there's a thin membrane that you can leave on, but in preference I prefer to take it off. So just like filleting a piece of fish, up, turn it over, knife along it. Now it doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to be braised and cut up, or you could leave it whole and slice it. But here I'm going to cut it into 4. So we've got 4 nice pieces of meat. This is all going to be then sweated down, fried off. This split, so both have a matignon in there, and then flavoured with some red wine and a little bit of tomato puree. So a nice hot pan, and it really does need to be quite heavily seared because it's going to be in the oven for 3.5 hours. So just dust off the bits of oxtail, place them in the pan, and we can do the same with the ox cheek. It's not so important with the ox cheek because it will only be in the oven for about 1 hour and 3/4, 2 hours. So while this is all browning nicely, we can start sweating our mirepoix off. Now as we're a bit short of time, we'll pretend our mirepoix is all nicely browned off, and we're chucking some tomato puree. So, in with our fried mirepoix that's nicely browned. Red wine. Followed by some veal jus. Now, you can use your gravy browning or whatever it is you have, or the Tetra Pak jus. So this needs to come back up to the boil. So there's our 2 pans, and as soon as they've come to the boil, we'll add the oxtail into one and the ox cheek into the other. So, neatly placed in, place our oxtail in. Generally speaking, you wouldn't serve these little parts, but they all add flavour to the overall dish, so it's still worth using them. Cover with some tin foil, then place them into the oven. That needs to be on the normal chef's temperature of whatever the oven's on, normally about 180, 200. Now, so we're going to serve it with some veggies. So for the oxtail, we've got some swede, a few beans, some turnips, some garden carrots, snow peas, and some roast beetroot, or sorry, poached beetroot. So that's going to be our garnish for the oxtail. Now, and by magic of yesterday, we have some completed oxtail. So all I've done here is passed the sauce, reduced it to its required consistency, adjusted the seasoning, and we're almost ready to serve. But what I've got here is a little bit of unsalted butter with some herbs through it, which is just almost like a beurre blanc. So, veg into the pan, all but the beetroot. To warm through, then here with the beetroot separate. Here we have literally parsnips brought to the boil, strained, cooked all the way through, and then placed in a blender, blended with a little bit of butter and a little bit of cream. So just a small amount in the base. Just spoon a little bit of the sauce over. If you're feeling frivolous, as we've cooked it in celery, it's not inappropriate, so a few celery leaves. And that's our first dish. The oxtail didn't take long to plate up, and nor will the braised cheek of beef. I'm going to use a pretty traditional garnish, which is baby onions, lardons of blanched bacon, and I've chosen some Giraud mushrooms, but they can be button mushrooms or oyster mushrooms, or any colour oyster mushrooms come to that, and a bit of parsley. And I'm also going to serve it with some deep fried onion rings. So the first thing we need to do is to, I've started it, is fry our onions and our bacon. I'm going to put in our Giraud mushrooms. These will pick up the flavour of the fat from the bacon, so they're not going to need seasoning at all. With braised sauces, it's actually quite nice to what's known as spike the sauce with a little bit of the red wine just in at the end, so it gives it almost a raw flavour. So just a little bit on, doesn't have to be masses. Just a couple of teaspoons or tablespoons of the jus. Just put a bit of the garnish over. Then a lot of garnish of the deep fried onion rings. But before I do that, just going to take a little bit of that stock I used for heating my veg, a few chopped chives, and just some onion rings to give it a different texture. And then those that are mad about chervil can put some garnish of chervil or parsley on it. So that's the second dish. Again, very quick once the meat's been cooked.